Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. I just love some of these fancy twist cards where you open up your card and some of the images pop out. But I've always been a little intimidated by these, so I thought I would go ahead and give them a try. And I wanted to go ahead and do a video to share with you some of the struggles and some of the ideas that I had for putting together this card. Now, one of the things that had always stopped me from buying these dies is they are a little expensive. But I was really pleasantly surprised at how many dies you actually get in your die kit. In this particular kit, there were 15 pieces. And I wanted to create a couple of projects to show you that your dies will go a long way. You don't necessarily have to use the set just to create your pop-out card. You can certainly create all sorts of other cards as well. So let me go ahead and get started. And what we're going to start today is I'm going to create the inside of the card, that little pop-up portion. And I'm going to be using a few dies. I recently got some dies from Tim Holtz, which are these little tabs. And then also I'm going to be using my Bugs ATC digital set that's also in my shop. Now this Bugs set coordinates perfectly with my imagesGarden passport kit set, which will release on the 5th. And then of course I'm going to use some of these Tim Holtz bugs and dies. And then to finish it off on the inside, I'm going to use some of these remnant rubs. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this is going to be a two-part video because I don't want to overwhelm you. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and create the inside portion, which I found also creates a cute little book if you tape a few of them together. And what I ended up doing is using my Bugs ATC printable digital set because these bugs were perfect for my die. So I went ahead and printed out my set, and then I cut them up, and then I found the ones that worked well with this particular die. Now when you create the card, you're only going to need 4 of your little images. But again, we're going to create that little book that I shared with you at the beginning of the video. So for that, you're going to need 8 images. And my ATC bug set has enough to create the book as well as the card. I also love that these little dies fit perfectly in my big, my big shot, but they also fit perfectly in my Sidekick. So I can easily just have everything on my desk and work right from my desk without having to get up and down to use my big shot. So once I knew that I was going for a bug theme, I found that it was easier to just cut everything out before I actually started putting my card together. So for my card, like I said, I needed 4 images, so I went ahead and cut out all of my bugs. And then there's some layering pieces as well. So I cut out not only the little booklet, but the layering piece that you're going to put your bugs on as well. And then that way I had everything cut out ready to go before I started my adhesive portion. Now recently I had someone contact me and say that they were having some problems using their Sidekick. So I wanted to go ahead and show you how easy it is to use this Sidekick. What I have found is, number one, you probably want to tape down your dies because this is a smaller die machine and you don't want your dies to move. And then the second thing you want to do is if you start to put your plates through your machine, you'll find that the handle does start to move a little bit. And once it starts to move, then you know that it's caught on, and then you can start finishing the die. So that's just a tip that I had for using my Sidekick. Now I showed you the little book cover that will work for the book, and I wanted to give you the dimensions for that. And the book cover dimensions are 13 by 8 3/4. And then you're going to want to score it at 2.5 and 2 3/4. And this will create the outside of your book. And then for the inside pages, you're going to use the die from the pop-up die card. And you're going to cut 4 of those. And these hook together perfectly. You're just going to want to have adhesive on the top portion of those little tabs that you just saw. And then you want to line them up. Now it's important that you do take your time and line them up perfectly because this is going to be a little book. And as you're going to see in a moment, I am going to glue some of those back pages together so you'll have a front and back page. Now if you were creating the card at this point, you would pretty much be done with the insert because like I said, you only need 4 pieces. but we're going to go on and we're going to create the little book. So I went ahead and cut out 2 more pieces and put those together like I had just shown you. Now, to create the pages, you're going to want to go ahead and take both of your pieces that you've put together, and the end pieces you're going to want to glue together. And this is because when you flip your pages, you want to have the front page and the back page with designer paper. And then when you open it up after you've taped the 2 ends, the middle portion will have your front and back page. And then all you need to do is do the same thing. You want to go ahead and add some adhesive to the back pages. So you're going to add adhesive to your 3rd panel, and that will glue to your 2nd panel. And then again on the other side, you want to go ahead and add your adhesive to the 3rd panel again, and then fold over the 2nd panel. And then you have your little book. Okay, so once you've glued your pages together and you've got the insert of your book, it's time to go ahead and attach the pages to the book. Now, the piece of paper that you cut out earlier is a little bit bigger than your pages, and of course you want that because you don't want them to be exactly the same size of your pages. But I didn't want to have white showing on the border, so I went ahead and I added some washi tape to the edges. Now, you could easily add another piece of cardstock, some ink if you wanted to, anything to add some decor to the edges. But I found that washi tape was really easy, and there are so many designs of washi tape out there that I'm sure you can find a set that would work great with your little book. Now, the washi tape that I'm working with today is from Primo Marketing, and I've shared this with you before. It's a beautiful set. It's a black and white set, and it has some great butterflies and some vintage words. So it went really well with my design. And I found that the black contrast against the yellow was a really nice pair. So that's why I decided to go with this washi tape rather than maybe some you know, spring colors, some yellows, anything like that. I wanted to keep that vintage vibe, and I felt that the black and the yellow worked really well together. And as you can see, it was really easy to add the washi tape. It was just a matter of putting it on my desk and adding it around the edges. And then I did add a little bit more than just the size of the book, and then I just trimmed it away with my scissors. All right, now that you have the edging around the inside of your book, it's time to add your pages. And this is a really easy process. All you need to do is make sure you have it lined up so that way when you fold your book, the binding and the middle part of your book will fold nicely. So that's the only thing you really need to pay attention to when you're adding your pages. And then it's just a matter of adding some adhesive to the front and the back of your page to add it to your book cover. So what I would recommend is when you are putting together your adhesive on this, just do one side at a time. Don't add the adhesive to both sides, so that way you can manipulate it a little bit if you need to. And then, of course, I always recommend using the really strong red line tape whenever you have something that's going to be opening and enclosing, so that way your adhesive doesn't pull up and you don't rip your paper. But remember, this red line tape is very unforgiving. So once it's down, it's down. And if you don't line it up perfectly, then you're going to have a hard time pulling these pages up without ripping your paper. So just be cautious of that. Now, I've had several people ask me about this little tool that I'm going to be using here in a minute. And this is this little pick, which I use to remove some of my red line tape. And this is a set that I picked up at Harbor Freight. Yes, my local hardware store. So crafters, don't be afraid to check out some of your local hardware stores, because there's a lot of tools in there that you can find a lot cheaper than getting them from some of the craft stores. Now, I'm not saying don't support your craft stores, because I'm one to support many of my craft stores. But if you can find some of these tools at a cheaper price that work just as well, I say go for it. I think the set that I got was, there was 5 picks in the set, and it cost me only a couple of dollars. And it's a tool that I use all the time. So when you are in that hardware store with your husband or your significant other, be sure to check out some of the tools, because there might be some in there that you can use for your crafting as well. All right, and then once we have our book nicely adhered to our cover, then what I ended up doing is taking some of my distress ink, and I always go to my walnut stain, but of course vintage photo or any of those brown tones would work well. And I like to distress the edges of the book. And this is because some of those white edges are going to show through, especially when you're using a die cut. So I just like to add a little bit more of the brown tones, not only to take away that white, but to give it that aged look. All right, so now the fun begins, and this is where we actually get to start decorating our pages. So within this set that I shared with you earlier, you're going to get a couple of more die pieces, and these are your rectangular pieces that have your rounded corners, and they fit perfectly on these pages. One of them is going to be your I guess your base, and that'll go directly onto your page. And then the second one is going to be your one with your scallops, and this is the one that you use for your images. And these again, these are pieces that we cut out earlier because, like I said, I like to cut out all of my pieces before I start putting my projects together, so that way I have everything in place. All right, so for the inside portion of my book, I did go ahead and speed up the video because for the most part, this is the same process. You're going to just want to take your first oval that you cut out, and then you're going to take your scalloped oval that has your image, and you're going to put one, the image one on top of the other one. And you don't want to adhere them right away, because if you want to do any stamping or add any of those remnant rubs, you want to do it before you actually add it to your book. Now, I decided to go with these remnant rubs because these were the perfect size. They had this nature one that had all sorts of little words that worked great with nature. And then they also had these little stars. And these little images and words fit perfectly on these little rectangular pieces. So I just went to town. I've created several of these little books at this point. And I have so many of these remnant rubs because I'm only using 1 or 2 words off of them. And some of the words have the, you know, the word bee in there, so it worked really nicely with the bee. And some of them were, of course, nature themed. I think some of them, let's see here, some of them read, you know, figure 1, 2, 3, and that worked really well with the butterflies. And then I had some that said fly away, and a lot of these bugs had wings, so it worked really well. But you can use any of these. The sets have numbers. Like I said, they have words, they have stars. But don't be afraid to use some of your stamp sets as well. You just want to make sure that when you are stamping, that you do it before you actually add it to your book, because it's going to be really hard to keep that book open. And once you stamp, your ink is on the page, so there's not a lot you can do at that point. And that was another reason why I chose to work with the remnant rubs, because I could line those up perfectly and not worry about a bad stamped image. Now, within my little book, I did leave one page blank because I do want to add a sentiment. And on my books, I created a couple of these books. The first book that I created, it said, "In dreams we catch glimpses of life larger than our own." And this was a Tim Holtz stamp sentiment, and it fit really nicely on my little book. And then the second one that I used was another Tim Holtz stamp sentiment, and it said, "Live the life you've imagined." And I do have some of these stamp sentiments in my shop, so I'll make sure that I link the sentiments along with all of the products that I used to create the cards below. So be sure to check those out. All right, so as you see, I also did have a chance to use some of the stamps from the Tim Holtz collection. And this, of course, is the Entomology collection. This is the set that was released, I think, probably about a year ago. And I didn't jump on board right away, but now that I have my own little bug ATCs, this coordinating stamp set and dies will work great with those. So now I can not only use Tim Holtz stamps and dies, but I can also coordinate them with my own little ATCs. Now for the cover, I made a couple of these, but for this particular cover, I went ahead and I cut out the bees and I added them to the honeycomb cover. And then I ended up taking some of those chit-chat words for the label, and I'll be adding that in just a minute. But for the first book that I created, I used actually a die that framed the butterflies, and that was one of my ATC cards. And I cut out the butterflies, and then I added the figure 3, 4, and 5 to it, and that worked nicely as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can go for the cover of your books. Okay, so we're just about done creating the little book here, but I wanted to remind you that we are going to do a part 2, and this is where we're going to actually put the card together. This pretty much is just the demonstration of the insert of that pop-up card that I shared with you, and then tomorrow we'll go ahead and we'll put the card together. It is a really long process when you're putting this together, and that's why I wanted to put it in 2 videos. So as always, I'll leave a list of all the products that I've used to create this little book along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And when you subscribe, you can also hit that little bell that will notify you when there's a new video posted. Now, the Bug ATC printable digital set is already in the shop. But don't forget, my March release for my vintage garden will come out tomorrow. So be watching for that. So we'll go ahead and we will post part 2 of this card on Wednesday, which is March 6th. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.